Welcome to 𝐬𝐥𝐞𝐞𝐩𝐢𝐧 audiobook. Story name, Sleeping Dragon. Chapter 1. Someday Princess of Angolan was going to learn to look before she leapt. Today, however, was not that day. Nor had it been any of the days leading up to her current predicament. For now, 𝐬𝐵 could only huddle deeper into the abandoned burrow and eavesdrop shamelessly on the Macanaries gossiping a few feet away. I'm not sure sticking with Tort is the best idea. He's still planning to rendezvous with the 𝐬𝐥𝐞𝐞𝐞𝐩𝐢𝐧. The sniveling whine of the man's complaints had been going on for several minutes and 𝐬𝐵 could only roll her eyes. She's unhinged for sure. But the reward will be worth it if she finds whatever it is she's looking for at Uslan Manor. The second voice, at least, sounded more upbeat. Although excitement at getting back into the good graces of a cruel sorceress seemed misplaced. In 𝐬𝐵's opinion, not sure we'll survive the trip to Uslan, the first voice answered morosely. The Winchantries to going be few areas about tar failure at 𝐿𝐶𝐬𝐧 and 𝐬𝐵 heard stories of how she deal with failure. A momentary flush of pride distracted 𝐬𝐵 from the discomfort of cramming herself into the hallow. Her sister had been more than a match for Velia, and she would regret her decision to attack 𝐬𝐵's family for a long time. Not that 𝐬𝐵 had been any help in repelling the grey enchantries to her minions. She'd been helpless to do anything but hide in the shadows and watch tar events unfold. She'd heard one, if it not both, of her sister were in imminent danger. 𝐬𝐵 rushed to Pip's home, hidden on the outskirts of 𝐿𝐶𝐬𝐧. She hadn't given a single thought to the repercussions until she arrived at the edge of the forest, just in time to see the approaching squad of dragons, to watch as they swooped into battle the troop Macanaries and renegade drakes led by Velia and her latest lackey, Mayor Tort. Only in that moment had 𝐬𝐵 realized how big of a mistake she'd made. Pip stood on the tower, magic glowing fiercely as she held off the attacking dragon shifters. And 𝐵 watched from the far side of the battlefield, poised and ready. This was the closet 𝐬𝐵 had been to her sisters in years. For a good reason. If she'd rushed even a few steps closer, there would have been no stopping the chaos. As it was, 𝐬𝐵 to get completely absorbed in the tempting vision of the power she saw, just enough to glimpse the ribbons and edges of what 𝐵 clearly saw on the battlefield between them. Especially the dark power dripping from the grey enchantress and the more brilliant, blinding magic pipe wove in the air above them. Thankfully, the distance was enough for 𝐬𝐵 to resist the call of Pipe's more demanding magic. The desperate urge to create and change that was a relentless challenge to the opposite nature of 𝐬𝐵's own Goft. 𝐬𝐵 had forced herself to stay put and fought the impulse to throw herself into the fray and defend her family from Vale's invasion. It's not our fault, the second merc insisted. We could have anticipated that kind of magic storm. Not even Velia stuck around in the face of it, neither had 𝐬𝐵. Thought forcing herself retreat back into the woods had been one of the hardest things she'd ever done. When Pip hitched a ride on the white dragon and flown toward 𝐵, 𝐬𝐵 had known she needed to leave. The distance between them closed fast and the siren call of their magic had beat at her resolve like a drum. 𝐬𝐵 knew, when 𝐵 and Pip finally come together, the pull on her own gift would be undeniable. So she'd run deep into the forest until the glittering wafts of magic faded and the demanding call of her sister's power eased. She'd been far enough away that she hadn't been able to see the results of the storm they'd unleashed, but she heard it, felt it, and watched the aftermath as Velia and her mercenaries tucked tail and ran. 𝐬𝐵 should have kept going too, should have returned to her secluded cottage and her solitary mission. But she'd realized a group of mercs, led by Tort, remained hidden in the forest instead of fleeing with the, and Evie couldn't make herself leave no until she knew what they were up to. Not until she was sure her sisters were truly safe. So Evie had spent the past few days carefully watching the movements of Tort's men, watching and searching for the perfect spot to listen for any scrap of information they might let slip. Now here she was, curled up tight in a hole dug beneath the long-rooted tree on the outskirts of Tort's secret encampment. Staying still and silent, despite her protesting muscles, to eavesdrop on soldiers whining about their commanders. Look, it's not been watching the manor. He thinks we're going to transport the guy who got turned into a statue by wagon. We're going to snatch him and hand him over to the enchantress like a gift. Tort figures it will appease her enough to continue paying us, Evie wanted to growl, or last out with her own power. Instead she held her breath and her temper as they discussed the planned abduction of a man who'd already sacrificed everything. She would never forget the way the price had looked. Furios and determined throwing insults into the face to the Grey Enchantress, infuriating her until she cast a spell that transformed the prince into solid stone. As foolish as it seemed, Evie understood exactly why he'd pushed so hard. Caleb of Ardell was desperate to save his parents from a curse-gone ring. Have any hope of making that happen, they needed to understand the magic Vayli had used. The meant be needed to see the spell. Through the temporary sharing of her sister her gift, Evie caught a glimpse of the magic as well, enough to know her gift could help 𝐶𝐵𝐴. Was the second more important reason Evie had remained in the woods, hoping to find an opportunity to get to the cursed prince without risking getting too close to her sister. Right, the winner scoffed. How are we going to get the statue away from them? They've got reinforcements now, and more coming. They aren't going to transport it without a whole squadron of guards. Tort's already planned out the perfect place for an ambush. And he has some magic think that will freeze the wagon in place. We'll attack in the confusion, they won't know what hit them. Evie pressed her lips tight, squeal of excitement that wanted to escape. Finally, something was. Tort's greed was going her way. Tort's greed was her opportunity to kill two birds with one convenient stone. Finally, chapter 1 is completed. Chapter 2 is next video. Thank for watching. Subscribe now.